All right. So, hello everybody, and today we have our next session, which I suppose will be extremely interesting and substantial. And today's speaker is Konstantin Degtyaryov, who is a human rights professor, human rights law professor at the Liverpool University, Great Britain, but he is originally, as far as I know, from Belarus. So this is also the representation of one of our partnering countries in this project. And we are really honored, Konstantin, to have you here today, knowing how busy you are and how intensive your schedule is. So I won't take any more of your time and gladly invite you to proceed.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining me this afternoon. It's still afternoon in the United Kingdom, where I'm located at the moment. So hello from Liverpool, and so basically I have been introduced already, so I'm not gonna spend more time on that. I just wanted to mention that my key area, the area of my expertise, is the European Convention on Human Rights. And therefore, my presentation today will be predominantly focused on the convention itself, because it is my favorite pet topic, as we say. And I'm hoping that I will not be too boring for those of you, especially who, if your country is not a member of the Council of Europe, and I know that Belarus is one of them, and Belarus obviously is not the member of the Council of Europe, and obviously cannot apply to the European Court of Human Rights. However, having said all that, I have to say that actually the standards of human rights protection, at least they are supposed to be similar in all major systems of human rights protection, namely the Council of Europe and the UN human rights system. Now, my plan is, and please correct me if this is something that is not traditionally the case in these seminars. I will try to give you some interactive lecture, so to speak, for about like 45-50 minutes. Maybe longer, maybe shorter, will depend. And then we will open the floor for discussion. And then I will switch into Russian. As far as I understand, Russian is a little bit more familiar to, or I see the thumb up from the organizers, so that's a good sign. And then I will switch into Russian, and we will be able to discuss various issues which crop up, which actually emerge when we talk about freedom of assembly and association. I think that I can see the chat function here. So if you have a question, comment, or anything related of that sort, and you want me to react immediately, please send your comments there. I will try to react as quickly as possible. Now, if nobody has any questions or comments at the moment, let me then get started. I understand that there are representatives, we have representatives of many countries here, and I will try to make it applicable to all of you. But I also was told that I shouldn't be extremely, detailed and technical. So I will try to give you sort of a bird's view of the European Convention on Human Rights, of how the European Convention on Human Rights deals with this right, with the right of assembly and association. And obviously, I don't want to start by saying this usual stuff that people say, how important right to freedom of assembly and association is for democracy, and that is the core right for effective democratic representative regime. But this is kind of obvious. The European Court of Human Rights has said on a number of occasions that democracy is the only regime that is possible to coincide with human rights. So basically, human rights and democracy, although in theory they are quite different in their nature, they can exist together, maybe not exclusively, but very often they go hand in hand. So let me just introduce you what I'm going to discuss today. And if I get to my slides, give me a second. That's it. All right, let me tell you what I'm going to discuss today. And first of all, we'll look into the introduction. Can I ask anyone like who is on Zoom at the moment to mute their microphones unless they want to tell something? If that is the case,
muted.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, as I said, right to associations and all issues connected to this right is enshrined in Article 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. For those of you who are familiar with the convention, this is something that you know very well, and usually an individual right is located in one of the articles from Article 2 to Article 12 of the convention. Now, so I will try to look and to read this article with you, and then we will discuss what this article actually means and how it can be applied in practice. And then I want to actually emphasize that this right is twofold. It contains two quite distinct rights that are enshrined in this particular article. First of all, it's right of assembly, right? Freedom of assembly means freedom to gather together and present something, right? We will discuss what that can be, but this is like a right to physically come together and to push for a particular political agenda or social agenda, etc., etc. However, so freedom of assembly is one part of this article. The second part of this article, which can be logically and analytically distinguished from the first part, is freedom of association. And although usually Article 11 is one right, it can be divided in these two parts. Yeah, freedom of assembly, that we can go outside and protest against something, and freedom of association. We can create a union, yeah, that would push strategically for a particular outcome. And in this context, I will be talking about political parties. But the European Court of Human Rights in this context doesn't only talk about political parties, it also covers various different issues, including non-governmental organizations, like organizations that are pushing for a particular cause, like Greenpeace. I don't know, Amnesty International would fall within this, or Human Rights House would also be considered one of those organizations. However, not everything is covered by freedom of association. For example, governmental associations would not be covered. For instance, I don't know, like lawyers unions, like bar associations wouldn't be covered by freedom of association. Like police station, like universities, I don't know, factories, they would probably not fall under Article 11 in this particular aspect. But let's discuss it a little bit later. We have quite a bit of different things to discuss now. And first of all, let's actually read the Article 11 of the European Convention on Human Rights. And there is a relevant article of the International Covenant on Human Civil and Political Rights. So Article 11 tells us that everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and to freedom of association with others, including the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests, right? Now, that is the right, and as it is very common in relation to rights like this right is not absolute. Yeah, what is the difference between absolute and non-absolute right? Probably you have already been told that absolute right is the right that can never be restricted. It can never be interfered with. For example, right not to be tortured is one of those absolute rights. So effectively, absolute rights, as soon as we establish, we meaning the court or I don't know, any other tribunal, as soon as the court establishes that there is an interference of the state into this right, then this right is violated, right? So for absolute rights, interference means violation. Okay. For qualified rights, for so to speak, limitable rights, rights that can be limited, interference doesn't mean violation. Yeah. For example, here we can restrict freedom of assembly. We can restrict freedom of association. We can even ban a particular, I'm saying the state can ban a particular party and still be within the framework of right to freedom of assembly and association. So interference can be legal. However, the legality of this interference will depend on what was done by the state and how it was done and what are the justifications for what has been done. And answers to this question one can find in section 2 of Article 11. So in this article, it says that no restrictions shall be placed on the exercise of these rights, meaning rights to freedom of assembly and association, other than such that are prescribed by law and are necessary in a democratic society, in the interest of national security, public safety, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. This article should not prevent the imposition of lawful restrictions on the exercise of these rights by members of the armed forces, of the police, or the administration of the state. Okay. Now, what we can see in this part of the article is the principle of proportionality. Yeah. This test of proportionality is what the court usually applies to the cases that it is dealing with, right? What it means? It means that the interference with the right to freedom of assembly and association should be proportionate. Yeah, and proportionality is it's a big test, And unfortunately, I don't have time to go into all tiny details of this test. It's very interesting and fascinating. It includes it includes a number of steps, right? It starts by deciding whether there was an interference at all. It then asks whether interference was legal, meaning lawful from the point of view of the national law. Then it looks whether this was trying to pursue a legitimate aim. Then it would look into whether it's necessary in democratic society. And finally, we would look into proportionality stricto sensu. But like we would deal with this particular aspect a little bit later. Okay. If you have any questions, please let me know. Since I don't see any questions, I would assume that there are no questions. Or you can save your questions until the end of this presentation. Okay, let's start analyzing Article 11. So here we have, as I already mentioned, we have two distinct rights, which is right to freedom of assembly and right to freedom of association. Now, as I said, interference is possible with this particular right. However, in order for this interference to be legal, it needs to be justified. And this justification is enshrined in Article 11, paragraph 2, and it should be prescribed by law. By law, I mean national law. It should have a legitimate law itself needs to be of a particular quality. So you cannot arbitrarily prohibit some specific right to freedom of assembly. You need to have a predictable and not extremely intrusive law. So not all law would be in compliance with the convention. Then we need to talk about legitimate aim. And what are those legitimate aims in accordance to which the state can interfere? Well, there is a list that is mentioned in Article 11, paragraph 2. We already mentioned it's national security, public order, health and safety, morality, etc., etc. And then we need to discuss whether it is necessary in democratic society, whether it is proportionate, right? So in one of the interesting cases, and I think that you're familiar with this case, is the case of Alexeyev and Russia. This case was about prohibition or ban on gay pride parades in Moscow. So this parade was banned in Moscow, and the government was arguing that actually the justification for this ban is not because they are so homophobic or they don't like gays or something like this, but because they wouldn't be able to protect the participants of this pride parade from those people who are against who are homophobic, who are against gays, etc., etc., and therefore they, in order to protect the participants of those of that gay pride parade, they decided to ban it. Well, the European Court of Human Rights considered this issue and decided that this is not a good argument, that it is not necessary in democratic society, right? It's an extreme reaction to this issue. There are plenty of other options for the state. They could provide more security to this area, add more police, etc., etc., rather than prohibiting this particular activity. Okay. So that's the very brief, quick overview of this article. So let's discuss what is actually assembly. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit, but I would like to actually emphasize more on what assembly includes. And the European Court of Human Rights said that it would not consider this term restrictively. The court actually includes very many different issues, many different forms of assembly into this definition. So it includes all public and private meetings, yeah, all marches, demonstrations, and they are not restricted to political demonstrations. Yeah, so it's not only assemblies with political agenda. It can be also social gathering, for example, assembling for a hunt, or there were a couple of cases from Azerbaijan related to social claims, social demands, and the court also accepted that it is a form of assembly. Also, kind of passive protest, like sit-ins in army barracks, were considered a part of assembly. So the court accepts broad variety of different forms of assembly. Uh, um, it's interesting to decide to establish, and it's important to establish the relationship with Article 10 of the Convention, which is right to freedom of expression. Yeah. So inevitably, when you go and protest, you exercise your freedom of speech, maybe not in the form of speech, but in the form of some sort of expression. When you go with a placard saying something like, I don't know, Putin should go, stuff like this, you also express your freedom of expression. You make use of your freedom of expression. Now, and sometimes it is important to see what is the relations. I'm not going to be very technical. Usually the court looks into these two issues together. It considers Article 11 in light of Article 10. So put them together and decides whether the state actually interfered with both of these articles. Another interesting connection is with Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights. I will remind you that Article 9 is the freedom of religion. So what would happen if a religious gathering is prohibited? Yeah, what would happen if, I don't know, some sort of religious march is banned? In this case, the court actually came up with a very curious, although quite artificial criterion. So if this gathering is happening outdoor, yeah, then the court would look into both articles, Article 11 and 9. If it happens indoor or in private space, like if there is a mass, private mass, then this would be considered under Article 9, which is right to freedom of religion. This is a bit artificial from my point of view, but that's how it is at the moment. Okay. Let's move on and say, you remember when we discussed and we read Article 11, we said that the gathering assembly should be peaceful. If this assembly is not peaceful, it would not be covered by Article 11. And we all know that one of the most popular arguments for the governments is to say that a particular gathering is not peaceful and therefore we need to ban it. Now, the European Court of Human Rights stated in the case of Stankov versus Bulgaria that the assembly will not be peaceful if the participants have violent intentions. Now, you can tell me that it's almost impossible to prove that you don't, or you have, or you don't have violent intentions. Now, the European Court of Human Rights said that it is the burden of proof is on the state, so the state should establish that people have these violent intentions. How you can establish that? Well, for example, the I don't know, the organizers of the demonstration would say that, like, we will beat everyone up who is against us. Yeah, that would be clear indication of violent intentions. Usually this is not the case. However, the instances, the episodes of violence on which the organizers have no particular um, control of, so they couldn't control these episodes of violence, they don't turn the whole peaceful assembly into not peaceful. So individual episodes of violence cannot justify complete ban of a particular assembly. The fact that the assembly disturbs the society doesn't necessarily mean that it absolutely uh, gives the state a right to prevent this assembly, right? So when we have an assembly that the road blocking, when the demonstration prevents traffic from going in, this doesn't mean that the assembly is not peaceful. Um, Another issue that is important, and this is, I have already mentioned, that if you have a possibility of violent counter demonstration, yeah, it doesn't mean that your demonstration should be banned, right? It is, then we will talk about some obligations on the side of the state, and this means that the government has an obligation to protect against these counter demonstrations. And as I said, in the case of Alexeyev, banning this demonstration might be considered excessive. Okay. Uh, an interesting and important situation is that an occupation of a church by foreigners, by aliens, without valid resident permits should be considered peaceful if church didn't object to their presence. In this case, in CISA versus France, the court made these statements. Okay. So that is about the kind of precondition for the court to deal with a particular assembly. So the assembly needs to be peaceful, right? Violent assemblies, they are not covered by Article 11. Having said that, they still can be covered by Article 10, which is right to freedom of expression. Again, as I have already mentioned, in these articles, Article 10 and 11, the state can interfere legally. If we have a violent expression, the state can ban this expression if it is necessary in a democratic society. Okay, I'm hoping that what I'm saying makes sense. Let's then move on. So let's see what obligations the state have. We have established already what quality, what nature of the assembly we should have in order for this assembly to fall within the ambit of Article 11 of the of the European Convention on Human Rights. Now let's discuss what actually is needed, um, from the state in this respect. First, we will look into the negative obligations. Yeah, I don't know if you have already discussed this issue, but usually in relation to pretty much all articles of the European Convention on Human Rights, you need to, like the state has two types of obligations, negative and positive. Yeah, negative obligations, they don't have, they're not negative in the sense that they are bad or anything. No, negative is the character of this obligation, meaning that the state, uh, excellent, you have discussed negative and positive obligations, good. Therefore, I'm not gonna spend more time on that. So negative obligations under Article 11, the state just should avoid doing anything. Yeah, must let assembly happen as planned, right? Now, an interesting and important case here is Macedonian organization Ilinden versus Bulgaria. There are quite a few organizations like that, cases like this. This is an organization in Bulgaria of people of Macedonian origin. Like Macedonia is a country bordering Bulgaria, and there is a minority of Macedonians, and they wanted to have this organization and also rally, have a demonstration there. And the court said that what it means to interfere with the rights. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an outright ban. Yeah, it doesn't need to be banned both legally or de facto, because there are many different tools that the states can resort to when dealing with demonstrations. They can legally ban it, that they create conditions that de facto ban it. But it also includes different restrictions that can be taken before, during, and after the assembly. Yeah, and these measures might be more or less intrusive, and depending on the nature and the quality of this nature and the quality of these restrictions, they may be proportionate or not. So prior ban can have a chilling effect on the persons who intend to participate in the rally. Yeah, and this term chilling effect is important here, right? So we need to make sure that the state doesn't create the circumstances in which the people, the participants of this rally, are prevented, in fact, from participating in the rally. Well, I want to give an example of what is happening in Belarus at the moment, but it is extreme chilling effect. Yeah, when people are tortured, when people are put in prison, when the criminal cases are open in relation to people who do nothing more than protesting peacefully. Yeah, if the European, if Belarus was in the European Court of Human Rights, it would definitely be a violation of Article 11. But even without that, I'm sure that it is a violation of an appropriate article of the Covenant, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Now, sometimes in some cases, a refusal to allow an individual to travel is an interference. Yeah, we know cases and examples when the buses are stopped of participants of a particular rally for various reasons, related and not related to a particular demonstration. And also measures taken by the authorities during a rally, such as dispersal or arrest, etc., they will be considered as interference. And how we can conceptualize situations when the state interferes after the rally. Yeah, this is obvious. For example, initiating criminal proceedings for those who participated in this rally. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, that's exactly what I have already mentioned. Alongside with negative obligations, the state has positive obligations there. And these positive obligations for the first time, I think the court discussed this issue in the context of this article, is the case Plattform Arze für das Leben. My German is not as good as I wished it to be, but I think that this case is called Doctors in Favor for Life or something like this versus Austria. And in this case, the rally was organized by the pro-life doctors, and this rally was disturbed by counter demonstrations. So they were pro-life, and it was classed with a pro-choice demonstration, and you can guess that it was quite a while ago in Austria. Now, obviously, these issues that demonstrations are concerned with can be very sensitive, can be even offensive, right? And so if you feel very strongly about pro-life or pro-choice, this can be difficult. However, it is an obligation on the state. It is an obligation on the state to ensure that demonstrators are able to demonstrate without fear. I can see the question in the chat. Now, well, this is a very good question. The question is related to the legality of a particular rally. Well, the thing is here now, this is a classical example of proportionality. So the question is that the rally is not authorized by the law of associations or stuff like this, and then the state is demanding people to disperse. Yeah, well, we will need to look into various different criteria. Now, we will have to look into the quality of this law, right? And we will need to look into what are the reasons that the state is putting forward for this gathering to be legal, right? Now, peaceful protest is a right. We need to remember that. A peaceful protest is a right. Now, for example, if this peaceful protest is taking place outside a prison, right, or taking place outside a hospital, which can disturb, right, or when we have a situation when, for example, this rally can cause some religious tensions. So, for example, I don't know, some Islamic demonstration is taking place during the, or anti-Islamic demonstration is taking place during the some Islamic holiday or stuff like this. Yeah, in these circumstances, perhaps the state can demand this demonstration to go. However, if it is nothing like that, and the state still demands the demonstration to disperse, then there is a significant chance that the European Court of Human Rights will consider these actions of the state disproportionate. So illegality of a particular gathering for the European Court of Human Rights, as well as for ICCPR, International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights, this is not the end of the analysis. It's just the beginning of the analysis. Yeah. And very rarely, the requirement to get an authorization from the state prior to this gathering will be 100% legal from the point of view of the European Convention on Human Rights. So there are different types of authorization. One, you can only inform the government about the rally. That is often quite legal. But the other one is when there should be an active agreement of the states on a particular demonstration. And this is rarely proportionate. I hope that I answered this question. I think we can discuss it in more detail when I finish, but this was very relevant to what we are discussing now. So going back to, excellent. So going back to our positive obligations, well, the state should ensure that people express their opinions, their views without any fear, right? In this particular case, although the court established this positive obligation on the state, the court did not find a violation here because police eventually interfered and they sort of separated the protesters. However, this case is important from the perspective of the principle. Now I need to hurry up. I have to say. But when we talk about positive obligations, the state has quite a large margin of appreciation. Now, please write in the chat if you were told what margin of appreciation is and how it is used in the context of the ECHR. It is less so in the context of UN Human Rights Committee, but for the European Court of Human Rights, the margin of appreciation is one of the key doctrines that is, no, you haven't. Okay, so let me briefly explain you what margin of appreciation is. Now, briefly, it's a very difficult task, I have to say, because I know at least 4 books that were written specifically on the margin of appreciation. So it's a huge concept. Now, margin of appreciation is a scope for the state to make a particular choice within the scope of a particular article. I know that it's very difficult to understand here, but let's imagine, so basically margin of appreciation gives the state an opportunity to make their own choices within the scope of a particular article. So let's say, what example I can give you? The case of one of interesting cases, not relevant to freedom of association. The case is called Vaux versus France, VO. Yeah, In this case, the question that was under the discussion was when life begins. Yeah, what is the moment when life begins? Now, I have to say that in Europe, many different states decide this question differently. In some countries, life begins from the moment of conception. So as soon as fetus is formed, that's it. That's life. In some countries, it's during some periods within pregnancy. In some countries, is when the baby is making the first breath. In some countries, when the baby can function outside the mother's womb, etc., etc. So there are plenty of different moments. So the European Court of Human Rights, when discussing this issue, then in context of right to life, obviously decided that the states can decide for themselves, and that is what margin of appreciation is. So an ability for the state to decide for itself. So although this question kind of falls within the ambit of Article 2 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the states are allowed multiple solutions to this question, and that is what margin of appreciation is. In the context of positive obligations, it means that the state can decide what is the best tactics, what is the best strategy in protecting particular demonstration. The court will not say that, like, you have to have 350 soldiers protecting those protesters. No, the state will have to decide for itself how many, what would be the best way. Maybe there is a better way of geographically removing different protests, kind of directions, etc., etc. So the court would allow the state to decide. That is what margin of appreciation is. And margin of appreciation is applicable to positive obligations under any article, negative obligation only in relation to articles which are qualified, which can be restricted. Oh, Jesus Christ, I need to finish soon, and I'm nowhere near the finish. Okay, let's move on. I'm hoping that I'm not boring you to death. If you want me to hurry up, I will. Just let me know. Positive obligations. Now, another question that is very important is whether the states should enforce or make others to tolerate assemblies on their land. So, for example, if I have a field, somewhere in England, in Merseyside, in Liverpool, and somebody wants to have a demonstration on my field, should the state force me to have to allow this demonstration? Well, this question is difficult, and the answer is perhaps mostly no. The case at hand is the case Appleby versus the United Kingdom. This case was on Article 10, which is freedom of expression, but it is useful here. In this case, the applicants, they wanted to distribute leaflets in a shopping center. Shopping center is a private entity. And here we need to have a balance between Article 1 of Protocol 1, which is right to property, and rights of demonstrators to do that. The court said here, first I'll tell the argument that the applicants were pushing forward, is that shopping center was effectively the town center in this little town in the United Kingdom, and it was the best place where they could do that. However, the court actually didn't agree with that in this particular case, and said that there is no automatic right to access others people's property, for example, for exercise of Article 11. And this right might only happen when, well, the whole town center is occupied by a particular company, for example. Yeah, but again, the threshold here is quite high. You need to effectively be prevented from having a rally or a demonstration uh, in these circumstances. Okay, so as I said, in this case, there was no violation. Let's discuss quickly limits on Article 11. As I said, it's a qualified right. And the court and the convention actually says, I have already written that it's the interest of national security, public safety, prevention, disorder, or crime, protection of health of morals, or protection of rights and freedom of others. Usually, in these cases, the court has broad margin of appreciation, and I have already described it. For example, in the case of Christians against racism and fascism in the UK, and this is quite an old case, the court took into account various conditions and various issues, that there was a threat of violent counter demonstration, the atmosphere was tense, there were riots in the past, and taking all these conditions together, the court found that the ban of this march is not unreasonable. So there was no violation here. But this is a problematic approach, isn't it? So because the atmosphere is tense, this argument is actually in favor of allowing the demonstration. Because these are the times when democracy is most necessary, so to speak. I just wanted to also mention that this was quite an old case, and since then the court actually developed its attitude to demonstration. I'm not going to discuss this case, but for Russian colleagues, the case of Navalny and Russia, the Grand Chamber case of Navalny in Russia is one of the most important cases on Article 11 too. As I said, in recent years, margin has become smaller. It narrowed down. So when margin becomes smaller, the choice that the states are given is shrinking, is becoming smaller. The case that I have already mentioned is Stankov and the United Macedonian organization Ilinden versus Bulgaria. Here we have a ban that is a reaction to the views expressed at demonstrations. And here we had the ban on demonstration of nationalist organization, Macedonian organization. And the court discussed issues of public safety here, because public safety was the key aspect of this case. Now, and the court actually established a test of what the government should actually prove here. Now, first, the government should prove that there were serious disturbances, for example, in the past. And the court again said that risk of minor incidents is not enough, because when you have a public gathering, even if you have, like, let's say some, I don't know, like concert or nightclub gathering, like you can have some violent episodes. When you have plenty of people, you cannot exclude that there are violent episodes. And these minor episodes, they don't change the nature of the demonstration, and actually it triggers the positive obligation of the state to prevent, to react to the proportionately react to this kind of issues. And also, like, sorry, I was too quick to switch the slides. And also, separatist ideas themselves cannot automatically justify the ban. Of course, if you are in favor of violent departure of a particular area of the states, that might be appropriate to ban, but ideas of autonomy, etc., would not be enough. Then that is actually all I wanted to talk about assemblies, assemblies, and we move quickly to freedom of association. That is a wonderful question that I just see in on the slide on in chat about COVID-19 and freedom of assembly. Well, you will see that I have this question and as one of the discussion points at the end of my lecture. So I know that this is the most pressing question, and this is fantastic that you asked this question. It is a bit on the surface, I have to admit. I have to say that okay, well, let's discuss it at the end of our lecture, and I would like to know your views on that before I tell mine. And the second question, the second question is about whether it is possible, it is possible to prioritize protection of health as opposed to freedom of association. I want to know your views first. I will definitely tell you what I think about that, but I want to know what you think. Now, give me 10 more minutes. Can I have 10 more minutes? And we will move to these particular questions. And but before that, I would love to finish freedom of association, which is thank you, which is not something that is less interesting. I will, Daniil, I will definitely come back to your question. What is association, right? I told you that association is an entity that is formed by individuals, and the court is actually quite quite liberal, so to speak, into deciding what sort of association we can discuss. And it is a bearer of, an association is bearer of its fundamental rights. So for example, a party or a non-governmental organization can itself bring a complaint to the European Court of Human Rights. Yeah, we will see that in a couple of minutes. And for example, Article 11 doesn't give individuals a right to join a particular association, so that can be something that is decided by association. And it needs to be stable. It doesn't need necessarily to be registered, so to speak. Yeah, so non-registered organizations also would fall under this definition, but it needs not to be sporadic, so to say, right? People who gathered for some rally, they are not an association. Yeah. There is a positive freedom here that it's right to form an association, so everyone can form as an association, but also a negative freedom. It's right not to join an association. If you don't want to join an association, you cannot be forced to join that. So for example, there were a couple of cases against France where some landowners had to join the Association of Hunters. Yeah, one of the applicants, he didn't want to join this association. He didn't like hunting and he didn't want. And the court found that there is a right not to join an association here. So what are the limitations that are set out in Article 11.11.2? The same as limitations that we have already discussed in relation to freedom of assembly. Yeah. And in this particular part of the lecture, we will deal with political parties. Yeah. And I will only talk about two cases. So it will literally take me 5-7 minutes. And I want to show you the difference between two cases. And the first case is the case of United Communist Party versus Turkey. And the second case is the case called Refah Partisi versus Turkey, which is a party that is called Welfare Party versus Turkey. Let me see. The first one is United Communist Party versus Turkey. Yeah. The court has clearly emphasized that political parties are crucial for democracy. Yeah. The court said that political parties are essential to proper functioning of democracy, and this is clear. Democracy depends on pluralism, so there should be plenty of parties that reflect different views in society. Like freedom of expression, and I know that you have already had a lecture on freedom of expression, and the European Court of Human Rights, in a number of cases, said that expression can shock, disturb, or offend, and nevertheless it would be protected. It is still protected by Article 11. And political parties represent the different shades of opinion to be found within the country's population. Now, let's move on. What was the problem with the Communist Party? So how the state can outlaw a particular party? In the United Communist Party versus Turkey, the government argued that the party is called communists, and communism for them would be an opposite to democracy. And the second argument was that this party was trying to divide the Turkish nation. And the reason was because in the party's manifesto, they mentioned the Kurdish nation, which is a very sensitive issue in Turkey. Now, the court discussed this issue and said that what the Turkish authorities were trying to do, they were trying to actually say that they banned the United Communist Party. Of course, I had to mention that. So they dissolved this party, and they wanted to argue that this actually falls within Article 11, subsection 2. The court replied to these arguments and said that those exceptions that are in Article 11, paragraph 2 should be construed strictly. And only convincing and compelling reason can justify restriction. And there should be, although the state has margin of appreciation in assessing the proportionality of interference, there should be rigorous European supervision of a very limited margin. Now let's see what it means in practice in this particular case. The court said that communist in the name itself is not sufficient to justify the solution. It's too drastic, it's too disproportionate. And the second argument that the state actually put forward about dispersion, about the fact that division of the Turkish nation, the court said that, well, this issue should be discussed. Yeah, it's not necessarily um the reason to ban a particular party, and the party actually asked for a dialogue rather than pushing for a particular agenda. So in this case, the court found a violation. Uh, However, now let's compare it with the second case, the case of Refah Party C versus Turkey. Now, I want to mention that United Communist Party was a marginal party. It was a very small party in Turkey. Yeah, never managed to get into parliament or anything like that. Yeah, as opposed to that, Refah Partisi was a huge party. Yeah, it had 22% of vote. It was one of the most popular parties in the country. Yeah, and it was very successful at a regional level. However, at some, I don't want to um, spoil the result of this case, but I have to say that in this case, why I show this case as a different, as an opposite to the United Communist Party, is because in this case the court did not find the violation. In other words, the fact that Turkey banned this party was okay from the point of view of the European Convention on Human Rights, even despite the fact that it was so popular. Now, let's see. It was banned by the Constitutional Court of Turkey for the following reasons. It's because it was an Islamist party. It made calls for abolition of secularism and principle as a principle of Turkish constitution. You probably remember that this is one of the um key aspects of Turkish democracy, coming from Atatürk, etc. And they also called for Quran to replace law, if necessary, by means of force. That's what uh, reason, the reasons for this ban were. The court did consider this case from the point of view of the principles that were laid down in United Communist Party. It again reiterated that a party may promote a change in the law by legal means. You remember that they were in favor of dialogue, etc. And the change itself should be comparable and compatible with the fundamental principles of democracy. So the court actually said that if a party is using democracy to come to overturn democracy, to get rid of democracy, the court cannot protect this particular party. Let me elaborate a little bit on this issue. So as I said, the party cannot use rights guaranteed by Article 10 and 11 to destroy the rights and freedom of the ECHR. And the representatives of the party said that it's not necessarily in the official party program that they want to achieve these aims, but the court actually took into account what the representatives of the party, the leaders of the party, actually talk about, and the court also established that the party must present a danger to democracy at the moment of its dissolution. And let's see how these principles are applied to the situation at hand. So this party was becoming increasingly successful, and it would have a real chance of implementing its anti-democratic program. You can say, look, the fact that the party is successful is not necessarily the reason for it to be dissolved. Quite to the contrary. However, the court actually took into account its anti-democratic agenda. Speeches of the party leaders were taken into account, and they were very much anti-democratic in their nature. And the fact that Sharia law was incompatible with the democracy, and also, like, just to wrap up with this issue, is it did call for use of force, which is also not particularly useful for democracy. And therefore, there was a pressing social need for ban of this party, and the ban was considered proportionate. So I'm not saying that this case is an absolutely correct. You can have your view on that. My students usually are quite divided into that, especially when they compare with United Communist Party now. But at the moment, this is how the European Court of Human Rights deals with this particular dilemma. Okay, I think that's we are done with the me talking, right? I want to turn to some questions for discussion. I will leave them on the slide, and we can have them as inspiration, so to speak. And that's a very good question. Whether online meetings fall under the term of assembly? Well, I wonder how the state can interfere with this right. Whether they would join the Zoom meeting and block it, it's difficult to say. Well, we need to think from the point of view of interference. However, well, I have to say that there is no case law on that issue. The European Court of Human Rights, as far as I know, has never dealt with this. But why not? The court was quite liberal in relation to the definitional part. Why not? Like, it's difficult to see how you interfere. Yes, you probably can interfere by blocking a particular um, websites, etc. And obviously, if the state is blocking a website, it would be interference, but rather with freedom of expression. I think that this would probably be an issue under Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights, rather Article 11. I feel that for Article 11, you need to have some physical representation of assembly rather than just online. However, well, I don't know. There is no case law. Well, this is a very quickly area in which developments are very, very rapid, and we might see in a couple of years some cases that deal with this. Now, my questions, and they are just inspirational. As I said, ta-da! The first question is exactly related to what Daniil has just asked me a couple of minutes ago. It's does COVID-19 pandemic impact the rights under Article 11? My second inspirational question is, in what cases do you think that a political party or an NGO should be banned? Yeah, it is related to what we have just discussed. And finally, how should the state react to violent demonstrations? And what are the extents of, what is the extent of violence that the state can actually use? Now, the floor is effectively yours, and I will switch into Russian so we can have a more meaningful discussion. Да. Я надеюсь, что мы сейчас, я не знаю, насколько будет для переводчиков легко перейти в другую сторону, все нормально, но я надеюсь, что мы с вами сможем пообсуждать эти вопросы. У нас есть, наверное, минут 20, 30, как пойдет. Мое Siri пытается со мной поговорить. Если у вас есть вопросы, было бы очень здорово. Вообще очень было бы здорово посмотреть, кто вы есть. Если у вас есть возможность включить камеру, это было бы замечательно. А то так, когда с этими, как они называются, черными квадратиками разговаривать сложно. Давайте я, наверное, мы запомним, да, вопросы, которые я предлагаю. Я уберу этот самый, как он называется, скриншеринг. И мы сможем с вами поговорить. Так, как это сделать? Ого, 73 человека смотрят нас.
Там сверху у вас есть такая красная кнопка Stop Share.
Stop Share. Вот, смотрите, сколько людей поддались на мой призыв включить камеры. Спасибо вам большое. Да, здрасте. Всем привет. Очень приятно вас видеть. Окей. Я думаю, что можем так поддаться анархии, и кто хочет, тот включает и говорит. Вот. По любому вопросу попытаемся обсудить. Но вот Даниил задал вопрос, давайте на него и попытаемся начать отвечать. Как вы думаете, вообще COVID-19 на что-нибудь повлиял в этой сфере?
Ну, здравствуйте, меня слышно?
Да, отлично слышно.
Я пока камеру не включил, просто, так удобнее. В общем, я хочу контекст немного дать. То есть основной, наверное, вопрос – это насколько, какая степень ограничения может быть предусмотрена. То есть я вот сейчас, например, как защитник участвую также в судах, и вот у меня буквально вчера было решение, что было ограничено право на проведение одиночных пикетов в связи с коронавирусными ограничениями как раз. То есть это, как мы все понимаем, все-таки это, наверное, чрезмерно как-то, да, потому что один человек всего лишь участвует, по сути, никого вокруг рядом нет, массы никаких, каких-то там массовых скоплений людей он не создает в принципе, потому что он один, вот. А какие все-таки условия должны быть соблюдены, чтобы все-таки такие ограничения могли быть признаны более или менее адекватными и соразмерными, да?
А как вы думаете?
Ох, сложно сказать, если честно. То есть, с одной стороны, вроде бы как все, если мы говорим, да, о каких-то более-менее сознательных гражданах, то есть они соблюдают ограничения, там, ходят в масках, там, перчатки – это такая уже более менее обязательная такая вещь, да, она скорее неэффективна, чем эффективна. Вот. А здесь в основном люди более-менее сознательно участвуют в таких мероприятиях, поэтому, как мне кажется, если соблюдено требование там, с масками и со всем остальным, то может быть и вполне возможно проведение таких митингов. То есть при условии, понятное дело, там, дистанции до той же, например. То есть почему нет? Возможно.
Окей, интересно. Кто-нибудь еще хочет высказаться по этому вопросу? Как вы думаете? Александр, да.
Да, я бы сказал пару слов. Всем здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Я думаю, что в этом вопросе все зависит от степени пандемии, от степени распространения вируса. Грубо говоря, если ситуация сейчас очень опасная и умирает в день очень много человек, то, наверное, можно воспользоваться современными методами распространения информации и, например, организовать такое мирное собрание через какой-нибудь Zoom и протранслировать его по государственному телевидению, чтобы соблюсти свободу распространения, степень распространения информации. Что-то похоже на то, как люди вышли на центральную площадь, улицы и провели там мирное собрание. Наверное, каким-то таким образом. Это я сейчас так на ходу сочиняю.
Отлично сочиняете.
А если степень распространения вируса не очень высокая, то согласен абсолютно с Даниилом, что можно ограничиться какими-то индивидуальными средствами защиты.
Окей. А кто-нибудь еще хочет с нами пообщаться? На БТ хотят это самое высказаться. Ну, я думаю, ну, не знаю, может быть, в какой-нибудь прекрасной Беларуси будущего на БТ у нас будет еще и не такое. Андрей, по-моему, поднимал руку. Пожалуйста.
Да, здравствуйте, коллеги.
Здравствуйте.
Я просто хочу поделиться своей практикой, да. У меня был случай, когда моего подзащитного задержали на митинге за то, что он был, во-первых, без маски. Ему пришлось отсидеть 5 суток ареста за неповиновение сотрудникам полиции. Еще плюс его арестовали за проведенную акцию во время пандемии. И назначили штраф 10 тысяч. Ну, мы либо защищаем людей от распространения вируса, либо судим людей все-таки за проведение митинга. Ну, никак нельзя вместе соединять эти разные наказания. И с моей точки зрения, это было чрезмерно суровое наказание.
Окей, отличное замечание. Так, тут у нас в чате что-то появилось. Если в Украине нет порядка проведения массовых собраний, есть статья Конституции, где написано, что можно собираться мирно, предварительно предупредив исполнительную власть, то есть за месяц предварительно. Можно ли считать сужением права ситуации, если примут закон, который потребует этот вопрос урегулировать и установить, например, 24 часа до начала собрания? Хороший вопрос. Сейчас мы к нему вернемся. Давайте закончим про COVID-19. Есть кто-нибудь еще хочет высказаться по вот этому вопросу? Арина?
Да, здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Я не знаю, насколько это именно ответ на этот вопрос, но у меня просто эта мысль сейчас есть. Я сейчас нахожусь в Германии, и здесь практикуется оговаривание акции, которая должна будет проводиться, и ограничение территории, то есть ее там лентами, например, относят, и обговаривается определенное число человек, которое разрешено находиться на этой территории, где проходит акция в средствах индивидуальной защиты. И мне кажется, что такой вариант проведения акции, но это работает, функционирует, например, в Беларуси, я не могу такое представить, но в странах, где государство может защищать граждан и предоставить такие условия, мне кажется, что это очень хорошая практика, потому что государство и не вмешивается, с одной стороны, и с другой стороны защищает желающих принять участие и желающих или не желающих, но которые могут каким-то образом взаимодействовать с персонами, которые в этой акции участие принимают.
Да, ну, отличный метод, да. Есть ли еще мысли по этому поводу?
Я бы хотела сказать.
Давайте.
Не могу включить камеру, потому что плохой интернет. Я думаю, что
не
будет
включайте.
пропадать. Касаемо коронавируса, да, спасибо. Касаемо коронавируса, я живу в Украине, и, в принципе, у нас можно проводить акции, не предупреждая власть за 5 часов, за 24 часа. И предупреждать власть — это все-таки, наверное, в моем понимании, согласовать работу полиции и скорой, если это будет нужно, потому что есть контрсобрание и так далее. Но в ситуации с Украиной у нас возникали и в социальных сетях, и на улице проблемы в том, что когда запретили собираться определенному количеству людей на улицах и, как следствие, мирно собираться, у людей был страх того, что власть может воспользоваться этим временем и принимать решения, которые будут противоречить взглядам больше там, определенного количества людей. Поэтому, когда у нас запрещали собираться в марте и так далее большому количеству людей, то в социальных сетях люди были недовольны тем, что власть может в тайне принять решение и не разрешить людям выйти и сказать и показать свой протест по этому вопросу. А касаемо одного человека, у нас, я думаю, что можно выходить в любое время, как можно одним сам себя заразить, поэтому вот так.
Да, очень хорошее замечание, и этот вопрос, связанный с тем, что воспользоваться, да, пандемией, государство может воспользоваться пандемией, этот вопрос очень сильно стоит на повестке. И, например, в европейских странах есть шанс того, что ограничения, которые принимаются во время пандемии, они останутся с нами и после пандемии. Да? И это очень хороший так называемый excuse, да, для государства, чтобы ввести какое-то ограничение, а потом с ним продолжать. Но у нас есть такая замечательная статья, которая называется статья 18 Европейской конвенции по правам человека, которая говорит, что любые ограничения прав человека должны быть введены именно с той целью, за которой они планируются. Да? И если вы знаете, я вижу, тут есть большинство молодых людей, это хорошо. Вот. Может, кто-то из вас помнит такого олигарха российского, которого звали Гусинский. Да, он владел телекомпанией российской, которая называлась НТВ. Ну, вернее, она также сейчас называется, но тогда это было совсем другое НТВ. И вот в свое время у него, пользуясь таким бытовым языком, НТВ отжали. Да? Каким образом отжали? Его арестовали якобы за неуплату налогов. Как только он передал акции компании НТВ Газпрому, его быстренько выпустили. Вот. Почему я рассказываю про эту историю? Я ее рассказываю потому, что в данном случае Европейский суд сказал, что на самом деле арестовали-то его не потому, что он уклонялся от налогов. Может, он уклонялся от налогов, кто знает. Но на самом деле его арестовали, потому что хотели отжать НТВ. А использовать легальные ограничения в прав человека для таких вот нехороших целей, это нехорошо. Вот. И Европейский суд нашел нарушение статьи 18. И после этого постсоветские страны стали настолько полезным, в кавычках, полезным источником для развития статьи 18 Европейской конвенции, что таких дел очень большое количество. И Украина вообще, то есть, поразвивала эту 18-ю статью, дела типа Тимошенко против Украины, Луценко против Украины. Они известны всем. Ходорковский против России, Мамадов против Азербайджана, Мирабишвили против Грузии. Все эти дела, они связаны с 18 статьей Европейской конвенции. В основном, когда людей арестовывают не за то, за что они по сути арестованы, а за то, что они занимаются политической деятельностью. Вот дела белорусские, которые Бабарика, Тихановский и так далее, это все бы пошло как дети в школу по 18 статье. Ну, мы немножко отклонились. Это очень интересная, сложная тема о том, что государства могут использовать COVID-19 для того, чтобы преследовать какие-то свои корыстные или какие-то другие интересы. Может, кто-то еще хочет что-то сказать по ограничениям именно во время пандемии, и потом уже я попытаюсь рассказать, что я думаю по этому поводу. Там есть рука. Саломе Церетели. Вот, можете говорить, если хотите.
Hi, I will speak in English.
By all means.
Okay. Sorry, I cannot turn on my camera because of internet problem. I don't know what happens, but I will speak. Hi, I'm Salome Tsareteli, and I'm from Georgia. And I'm activist too, and this COVID-19 case is very, very difficult for us, for activists, because when something goes wrong, our government uses it to reduce our power and our if we want to protest something, we cannot go outside, but still we manage it because, as you know, like few weeks ago in Georgia we had elections, and I'm not proud the fact that our elections was rigged. And we had in Tbilisi massive protests, and our government used its power to arrest people, to damage our bodies, and so on. And and now we have lockdown again. And we cannot protest in massive, we cannot organize massive protests because our government has all power to arrest us. But still, I think we still manage it. But it's very important, foreign countries to just give attention to us and help us, our foreign friends, because we alone, only human rights protesters, we cannot just only stand by ourselves, because if we do not get help from foreign friends, it's impossible to just manage to build democratic country. So it's quite difficult situation now, and I'm also read and watch the situation what is in Belarus now, and all Belarusians who are here, I really hope that soon you will get what you want for your country, and good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Really, really good interference, and I agree that Georgia is an interesting case, isn't it? Georgia, as far as I remember, derogated from the European Convention on Human Rights. Georgia also declared the state of emergency during the March, during the first lockdown, so to speak. Obviously, we cannot say that every single measure in that respect is a violation of human rights. We need to apply the principle of proportionality there. And this is what I wanted actually to tell you in general, that principle of proportionality is extremely important for these cases. And the state needs to act consistently, right? I saw that somebody mentioned that in Belarus there is no COVID-19, and therefore you don't need to use COVID-19. Well, basically, if Belarusian state started using COVID-19 specifically for opposition rallies, that would not be proportionate, right? So this is a problem. What is proportionality in this respect? Proportionality is, first, we need to see what arguments the state actually trying to justify its interference, and what those arguments might be. First, of course, we have to see the impact of the pandemic on people, right? How it spreads, etc., etc. That's very important, yeah, because indeed, if people are dying as a result of the pandemic, the state can legitimately restrict the freedom of association, even when we know that people will be responsible and they would wear masks, etc. The state can say that it is we cannot take the risks, yeah. And in the United Kingdom, for example, there was a lockdown, so people could not gather outside at all, yeah. And I think that in the middle of pandemic, the European Court of Human Rights would accept this as legal, as proportionate, because it clearly goes in favor of protection of people's health. And pandemic is the most unprecedented challenge for Europe, for the world. Yeah, therefore the scope of margin of appreciation will be huge. Having said that, this scope is not all-encompassing. It doesn't mean that the states can do anything they want, justifying these actions by pandemic, using pandemic. The court will look into the justifications. First, the court will look if it is a one-person demonstration, how is it actually possible to infect anyone, as somebody said? Of course, not possible. If there are some reasons for prohibition of this sort of expression, then we need to know these reasons. But also the court will see if the punishment is proportionate, right? When somebody said that the applicant or the client of this person was arrested and put in prison, where he was exposed probably to even more risk of being infected than being on his own on the streets, then this will be disproportionate, right? It is very important to see how this proportionality works, right? Окей, я не знаю, почему я начал говорить по-английски, но вот так вот случилось. Там несколько интересных комментариев. Хотел рассказать интересный кейс. Не помню, как его... Недавно вылетел у меня из головы, как он называется, на «С». Против Украины. Да? Украинские коллеги наверняка знают это дело про яйца на вечном огне. Это тоже про свободу выражения. Если кто-то знает название кейса, фамилию заявительницы расскажите, я забыл. Она жарила яйца на вечном огне, потом выложила в YouTube, вот, и она посидела там чуть ли не 2-3 месяца в предварительном задержании, как оно называется. Вот. И в этом деле Европейский суд сказал, что вмешиваться в такую свободу выражения можно, да, технически, но такое наказание, что человек за то, что яйца поджарил на вечном огне, сидеть 3 месяца в СИЗО, это как бы слишком. Вот. То есть пропорциональность наказания тоже включается в... Да, Синькова, точно, спасибо большое. Синькова против Украины, конечно. Вот вспомнил, что на «С» как-то. И в этом деле суд нашел нарушение частично. Не в части вмешательства, а в части именно наказания, что наказание было другое. Хорошо, тут еще был вопрос по поводу 23-34. Ну да, Беларусь — это отдельное дело. Милица Станкович написала, что по поводу третьего вопроса о том, как может государство, может ли применять насилие по отношению к протестантам. Не могу сказать, что невозможно применять насилие по отношению к протестантам, к сожалению. Да, потому что протесты бывают разные. Протесты бывают очень насильственные, да. И тут в данном случае это обязательство государства ограничить, да, ущерб или ограничить стычки. И в таком случае государство может использовать методы, которые эффективны. Вот вопрос пределов применения насилия очень хороший. Даниил, хотите прокомментировать?
Ну, я могу пару слов буквально сказать. Ну, насколько я знаю, в европейских странах, ну, в ряде, по крайней мере, европейских стран, есть такой стандарт, скажем так, что если насилие все-таки применяется к протестующим во время каких-то насильственных, ну, акций или там имеющих характер насильственный, оно должно быть применено в первую очередь для того, чтобы прекратить акцию, а не нанести кому-либо там вред или там еще как-то. То есть оно должно быть максимально минимизировано вот в этом плане.
Абсолютно.
То есть вот единственное, что могу сказать на эту тему.
Ну, абсолютно точно, абсолютно с вами согласен. Естественно, целью насилия не должно быть как бы увечья и так далее. Единственной целью пропорционального насилия должно быть прекращение, ну, например, как бы, если арестовываете людей, которые бьют машины, да, некоторую силу можно применить, да, но силу абсолютно пропорциональную противодействию. Вот и все. Вот такая. То есть пропорциональность – это ключевой подход как Европейского суда, так и вообще нормального подхода к тому, что может сделать государство в такой ситуации. Да? Если это пандемия и все умирают, да, государство может сделать больше, потому что это пропорциональность. Чем больше риск, чем больше угроза, тем больше государство может потребовать. Понимаете? Вот так вот оно работает. Вот такой механизм в данной проблеме. И принцип пропорциональности – это ключевой принцип, как я уже сказал, в отношении статей 8, 9, 10, 11, вот весь этот блок статей. Суд такие, я не знаю, чашечки весов, да, смотришь это самое, а вот, значит, на одной чашечке там, я не знаю, здоровье, да, с другой стороны, индивидуальное право. Что важнее в данной конкретной ситуации? Чат тоже говорит, что еще в БДИПЧе отдельно прописано, какое оружие силовики могут применять в мирных собраниях, чтобы не превышать полномочия. Ну, БДИПЧе – это бюро, то есть у них, наверное, какие-то рекомендации есть. Анастасия, хотите рассказать поподробнее?
Да, смотрите, у них был проект в Украине, они мониторили собрания в городах Украины, точнее, как власть разрешает или вот эти позитивные обязательства свои применяет к тому, чтобы эти мирные собрания можно было провести. У них есть такие рекомендации, и, следовательно, они мониторили, это такая была мониторинговая миссия ОБСЕ, и отдельно в ДИПЧе, и вот с этим они уже, когда находили нарушения, тогда они обращались дальше там, в Европейский суд, и поэтому, да. А еще по Украине хотелось бы добавить, что как бы когда карантин, то да, есть ограничения по собраниях нескольких человек. Например, у нас было, что нельзя в одной машине ездить более 2 или 4 людям, и гулять в парке тоже нельзя было более, собираться. Но если речь идет о мирных собраниях, то есть если вы не просто пришли погулять, а вы пришли, чтобы выразить свое мнение или свое недовольство чем-то, то вы имеете на это право, потому что чрезвычайное положение и чрезвычайная ситуация – это разные вещи, и вот чрезвычайное положение, по-моему, не ограничивает. Нет, наоборот, чрезвычайная ситуация у нас была введена, и она не ограничивает мирные собрания. А вот чтобы ввести чрезвычайное положение, нужно какие-то более весомые аргументы, и поэтому мирное собрание нельзя было ограничить.
Спасибо. Это, конечно, странное дело, когда гулять нельзя, а протестовать можно. Как будто бы, если вы протестуете, то вирус не передастся.
Это как бы весомая причина, чтобы собраться. То есть, если вы хотите, никто не может вам запретить выразить свое мнение. Вот, как бы так.
Ну, не знаю. Я считаю, что в такой ситуации Европейский суд не нашел бы нарушений. по второй части. По первой части я абсолютно с вами согласен, что если там одиночный пикет и пригоняют водомет, и с водометом стреляют в этого бедного одиночного человека, это, конечно, будет явно диспропорционально. Да? Если там 5 человек, а 30, как они называются, полицейских приходят с дубинками, начинают их бить и так далее, это тоже непропорционально. То есть все зависит от ситуации. Да, да, вот тут по поводу, что в России происходит, ни чрезвычайное положение, ни ЧС не вводилось, а людей штрафуют регулярно. Ну, зависит от того, за что их штрафуют, да, как бы тут нужно смотреть, государство может ввести и не чрезвычайное положение, а просто обычным регулярным законом ввести штраф за какие-то такие дела, за распространение там вирусов умышленных. Это не обязательно нужно оформлять чрезвычайным положением, мне кажется. Вот. Более того, чрезвычайное положение не дает государству карт-бланш делать все, что угодно. Есть статья 15 Европейской конвенции по правам человека, которая говорит о, как это по-русски сказать, derogation, отступление, отступка.
Отклонение отступления.
Отступление, да, от Европейской конвенции. Вот, и там все четко, то есть меры, которые вы используете для отступления, должны быть непосредственно и четко связаны с сущностью экстремального положения. Да? То есть тут статья 15 и вот эти отступления, они не дают государству карт-бланш. Да? Статьи эти... чрезвычайное положение это не... Да, вот, отлично, отлично. Они должны... Как бы, интересно, статья 15 не говорит про ограничения по времени, но по сути это весь смысл этих ограничений должны быть... создавать так называемый карантин для карантина, да? То есть нормы, которые новые, они должны использоваться только для того, чтобы воевать, так сказать, с той проблемой, с которой, во время которой они были приняты. Я не знаю, насколько я адекватно рассуждаю и понятно объясняю, но вот так. У меня есть статья недавно вышла по поводу того, какие меры можно применять во время коронавируса. Да? Вот, что еще нам в чате? Если, может, у кого-то еще какой-то вопрос, предложение, замечание, потому что уже скоро будем заканчивать. А то меня организаторы уволят.
Да, нет, все хорошо.
Все хорошо.
Да, замечательно, что есть время для вопросов. Мне кажется, это то, что участники всегда просят, и им никогда не хватает.
Ну,
что
да,
они
давайте
счастливы.
еще пообсуждаем. Так, что там еще было в чате? Я пытаюсь посмотреть.
Там
Если
кто-то писал, что есть ответ вроде как на третий вопрос, если я не ошибаюсь. Выше где-то было.
Да, я про него уже поговорил вроде.
Там написали потом.
Угу.
Да просто еще к вопросу по Украине. Вот я смотрю, кто это? Ярина написала, Волошин. А если ограничить до 24 часов, мне кажется, здесь есть интересное дело Букта против Болгарии, по-моему. Там, где как раз и было, что у них был национальный закон, который ограничивал, который устанавливал время предупреждения, там 3 дня, по-моему. Но это было, по сути, спонтанный assembly, собрание, да, протест.
Угу.
И вот там как раз, мне тоже что-то на русском сложно, conclusions.
Заключение.
Да, заключение суда. Вот, они как раз вот к этому вопросу, что Ирина спрашивает.
Да, спонтанное собрание – это вообще отдельная тема, да, то есть…
Она была как бы не очень спонтанная, просто у них не было там уже времени достаточно, потому что этот приезд этого консула, он был там, известно стало за день до приезда, и они, в принципе, не могли соблюдать 3 дня, да, соблюсти 3 дня. Да, спасибо.
Да, очень часто как бы реакция суда будет зависеть от конкретных фактов конкретного дела. Да? Если государство предоставляет, требует слишком многого, то, что невозможно реализовать, Европейский суд просто споткнется на первом этапе, на первом этапе теста пропорциональности и скажет, что данное ограничение не предусмотрено законом с точки зрения Европейской конвенции по правам человека, потому что закон должен быть адекватным и пропорциональным. Да, если вы говорите, что нужно, я не знаю, предупредить о каком-то собрании за 4 месяца до этого собрания, ну коллеги, мы же понимаем, что это все по сути не дает никакой возможности собраться вообще. Вот. Поэтому о пропорциональности нужно помнить о принципе этого chilling эффект, охлаждающий эффект, я не знаю, как он правильно переводится, вот, чтобы у людей была реальная возможность, да, выразить свое, например, несогласие с чем-то. Вот такие дела. Бухта против Венгрии. Да.
А не Болгарии.
А не Болгарии.
Да.
Коллеги, ну, unless у вас есть какой-то такой вот очень интересный вопрос, который поставит меня. А какой был второй вопрос? Черт, я уже и сам не помню, какой был второй вопрос. А в каких случаях государство может запретить политические партии или НГО? Вот про него-то и не поговорили. Вот. Ну вот в России запрещали политические партии. Я помню, было дело, региональная партия России против, или республиканская партия России против России. Там запретили и нашли нарушение Европейский суд. Вот. Во многих странах запрещали политические партии. Но как бы это не значит, что партии нельзя запрещать. Как вы думаете, вот вы согласны с этим кейсом Рифах Партиси? Вы бы Турцию поддержали в этом деле? Джихад вроде проталкивала партия. Ну ладно, народ устал уже. Бывает. Уже время позднее. Не знаю, это у меня 5 часов почти, а у вас уже, наверное, вообще ночь. Вот. Поэтому спасибо вам большое за увлекательную идеологию ненависти. Да, вот такое дело. В случае, когда есть идеология ненависти, это хороший hate speech и всякое такое, это хороший пример для… То есть, если я скажу, что там, я не знаю, из Англии должны всех белорусов выселить, потому что они разрушают Англию, все на кусочки, то это будет проблемно, да. Вот. Хорошо, коллеги. Ну что, начнем прощаться, я не знаю, если у организаторов какие-то еще вопросы?
Нет, Константин, я думаю, что можем заканчивать, потому что и вы уже, наверное, устали. Это, в принципе, почти 2 часа беспрерывной работы. И большое спасибо вам за то, что вы к нам присоединились и согласились выступить экспертом. Очень интересно, да, мы вот видим даже потому, что пишут сейчас участники и участницы в чате. Вот. И надеемся, что это не последний раз, когда вы к нам присоединились. Вот, поэтому спасибо большое. Я думаю, что мы можем сейчас останавливать запись, а я еще потом несколько организационных моментов скажу.
О, кто-то из ИГУ пришел.